Later.
All right, USA men's hockey gushes with patriotism after winning gold. Let's check it out. Welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. Americans love patriotism. The backlash to wokeism certainly proved that in the last couple of years. And Sunday morning, a team that absolutely loves their country won gold for the U.S. The men's hockey team oozes American pride. And you could feel our country's heart collectively burst as Jack Hughes scored the winning goal in overtime in Cortina, the game-winning goal in overtime. A bar at Hughes' alma mater, Miami of Ohio, showed us everything that we love about sports in this country. We don't talk a lot about sports on this show, but we're going to tonight here in the beginning. It is pride in where you are from. That's what is so great about sports. If you have a team in your city, in your state, whatever that is, your region, that's your team. That's your city, your state, your country, whatever it is, that's your team, and our team beat your team, and there's a lot of pride in that, and it's a beautiful thing. And in that moment that we saw early on Sunday morning, like so many others, America was the best. After the game, Jack Hughes, the New Jersey Devils forward that is now a household name, said this.
This is all about our country right now. I love the USA. I love my teammates. It's unbelievable. The USA Hockey Brotherhood is so strong, and we have so much support from ex-players. I'm so proud to be American today. We're USA. We're so proud to be Americans. Tonight was all for the country.
You feel that, don't you? That's what people want to feel. That's what people love about this country, about sports. That's the nostalgia that we all miss so much when it becomes so fashionable in our media and in our sports and in everything to kind of knock this country, to not like this country. It did become fashionable. And it was very abrasive and it was very obnoxious. That's a good kid that loves his country, playing a sport, playing it great. And he played his heart out, and he won a gold medal with a beautiful wrist shot in overtime. That is the American dream. He talked about how he's dreamed about that his whole life. He got to accomplish it. Why wouldn't you love the country that let you have that moment? It is a much better outcome for Hughes and for that team that refused to take the bait, that refused to trash talk their country and their president while in Italy over the last 2 weeks. They stuck to loving this country. It paid off big. Others, like skier Hunter Hess, as we know, couldn't resist.
I think it brings up mixed emotions to represent the U.S. right now, I think. It's a little hard. There's obviously a lot going on that I'm not the biggest fan of, and I think a lot of people aren't. If it aligns with my moral values, I feel like I'm representing it. Just because I'm wearing the flag doesn't mean I represent everything that's going on in the U.S.
And with that, there goes your shot. Half-pipe skier Hunter Hess quickly backtracked from that comment a couple of weeks ago after turning off millions of his potential fans. It didn't help. Hess ended up finishing 10th place in his event. In fact, it was another American that actually got it done in that same event, winning gold for the United States, but it wasn't Hunter Hess. Figure skater Amber Glenn had a full agenda going into media day before the Olympics got underway. She could not wait to criticize her home country and the immigration policies that easily won Trump the last election and gave him a swing state sweep in 2024.
It's been a hard time for the community overall under this administration. It isn't the first time that we've had to come together as a community and try and fight for our human rights. And now, especially, it's not just affecting the queer community, but many other communities. I know that a lot of people say, you're just an athlete, like stick to your job, shut up about politics, but politics affect us all. It is something that I will not just be quiet about because it is something that affects us in our everyday lives.
In the end, Amber Glenn completely botched her short routine, finishing in 5th place. So what happened to these two? Well, just imagine the tremendous pressure that these athletes are under, the psychological strain of representing your country in the Olympics, international television, everything else. It's a lot of pressure. And then as you're gearing up for this spectacular moment, an idiot sports reporter who risks nothing asks you a politically divisive question that has nothing to do with why you're there, hoping you're dumb enough to answer it and go viral for bashing the American president on foreign soil just before representing your country in the Olympics, which is what that sports reporter is dying for you to do. And you do it. That's what happened. You don't think that's going to get into your psyche when you make a move like that and anger half of your country and have all of those vibes coming at you, whether it be just in your mind or on Instagram, anywhere else? Most athletes are actually conservative. People that compete at that level are not communists. They don't want to share everything. You get to that point, you've won, you've strived, you've killed yourself to get there. It's a pretty conservative thing to be an elite athlete, but a few are not. And those few decide to reveal it and virtue signal all the time. And we hear it all the time because sports reporters love to play it for you. And in this case, it cost them dearly. Years of training blown, an opportunity that only comes every 4 years, an opportunity that most elite athletes only get once during the prime of their athletic careers. If they're lucky, they blew it. The U.S. men's team enjoying all the glory because they didn't blow it. Celebrating with our FBI director, a huge hockey player and fan himself, Kash Patel, and all smiles during a 3-minute phone call from the president, which included an invite to the State of the Union.
We're giving the State of the Union speech on Tuesday night. I can send a military plane or something, but if you would like to, it's the coolest night. It's the biggest.
We're in.
Can you pick us up in Miami on Tuesday morning?
Yeah, Tuesday morning. Close the northern border.
The nice thing about being president is I can tell you, you don't have to worry about the weather or landing.
The plane just barrels right through whatever you got to deal with. You don't have to worry about the weather when you land on one of his jets. That's funny. Trump also had high praise for the team goalie, Connor Hellebuck, who had one of the most incredible saves you could ever even imagine, deep in the third period in a tie game. Look at that. I mean, that's amazing. The stick out there, bending back, just dink it and get it to slide past the goal. That was the moment that made it all possible, sending this game into overtime. Take a listen to this.
Your goalie played not bad.
Say hi to him.
How you doing, Don?
I have seen hockey goalies have slightly worse games. Unbelievable, and you were all unbelievable.
That's good stuff. But it wasn't all smiles for everybody, of course. The Canadian coach complaining about the overtime format in the 2-1 loss, saying you take 4 players off the ice and now hockey's not hockey anymore. It's interesting, though, when that overtime format helped them win a game, you didn't hear any complaints at all. Team Canada forward Nathan McKinnon saying you'd be the judge of who was the better team today after they lost 2-1. I think the better team probably won, sir. Canadian sports network Sportsnet claiming supernatural forces were at play. Bro, you just lost the game. It does happen. The Canadians are furious. And of course the Canadians are furious because they don't have a lot to hang their hat on in the first place. Hockey is like the big thing, and a lot has also been building up to this. Trump's trade war from nearly a year ago is where it all started. And more broadly, his threats to make Canada our 51st state, with an argument that actually does kind of track in a lot of ways. We already secure Canada. So much of their economy is built off being our neighbor, and we allow them to save an absolute fortune with a very feeble military presence because they live right next door to the U.S. military. Take a listen.
Canada has been ripping us off for years on tariffs for lumber and for dairy products. 250%, nobody ever talks about that. 250% tariff, which is taking advantage of our farmers, so that's not going to happen anymore.
There's a lot of other sound from him over the last 8 or 10 months. Again, talking about just how much we give Canada just by being here and how much they kind of leech off of the prosperity of this huge country that they seem to have a lot of negative emotion towards at times. They certainly do right now. You know, Trump enjoyed watching that big win, now offering to send a jet to bring the boys to Washington this week. A resurfaced tweet from last year, former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. You can't take our country, he said, and you can't take our game. Well, we might be leaving Canada there, but, sir, I think we did take your game. All right, so the last time that the U.S. men's team won Olympic gold was in 1980, when the man right there on their shoulders was the captain of the team. They called it the Miracle on Ice, 46 years ago? And after yesterday's win, our boys hoisted Mike Eruzione, the captain of that team, onto their shoulders, and Mike Eruzione joins us now. Sir, it's good to have you here. I mean, this is just so fun. You were there, obviously. Tell us what it was like.
I was like a beach ball. They just kept throwing me and throwing me. It was outstanding. I was so happy for the men. And you know what? Let's also add our women's team. We won 2 gold medals in hockey, the women's team and the men's team. And I know a lot of these players. I spoke to the team the night before the game. I work at Boston University. 5 Boston University players are on the U.S. team. So it was exciting for me.
Yeah.
As you can see, I'm like a child. And it was for them. It was their moment. This is what they dreamed about. I've talked to these players many times over the years, and many of them said, they grew up watching Miracle. They grew up watching our team and what we did. And now that was their moment. And I'm so proud and so happy for them because they've achieved their dream in their life. And so many young men and women, young hockey players now, are going to want to play hockey because of what the men and what the ladies did. So it was great to see.
It's an amazing thing. The forward, Brock Nelson, on the team has just this insane story that I want you to comment on. His grandfather and his great uncle were on the 1960 gold-winning USA team. His uncle then was on the Miracle on Ice, your team, in 1980. And now here in 2026, he wins gold as well. That's just an insane legacy.
Yeah, we've won 3 gold medals, and the Christian family have been a part of all 3. And it's funny, when Brock scored earlier in the Olympics, I texted Davey, Christian. I said, finally, a Christian that scored in the Olympic Games. Because Davey only had a ton of assists. He didn't get any goals. But he was a huge part of our success. So what a tribute to the Christian family and how special it is for them.
It's just amazing. The president calling the players after the game to congratulate them a few minutes on the phone was really cool. You had the FBI, I'd never seen something like this before, the FBI director chugging a beer in the locker room after the game. What did you make of that? And kind of, it does bring in a political side to this, which of course enrages the left. But, the moment right there in the phone call, your reaction to that?
You know what? I know Mr. Cartel is a big hockey fanatic. He plays a lot of hockey. He loves the game. He plays the game. Good for him. You know what? I'm not a political guy. I don't get into politics and all, but and I've said this, and I'll probably get in trouble. I've been saying it all along. I'll never be a police officer or a firefighter or somebody in the military who protects and serves our country. There's no greater feeling than putting on a USA jersey. You're not playing for Chicago or Boston. You're not playing for a Super Bowl or a Stanley Cup. You're playing for a gold medal, and you're representing your country. And no team did it better than our men and women's team did. And saying how much they love this country and how fortunate they are to be in this country and to play for the United States. It's special. It means something. And I think everybody saw that. When you saw that on the podium right there, you know how proud they were to represent the United States? And I get it. People have their own opinions on what's happening, right or wrong. But it's a moment like this that makes us realize why we live in the greatest country in the world.
And that's what honestly what the people that watch the Olympics want. They want to see a team that's dripping in patriotism. They want to see that, and they did with them, and I think that's why there's so much love there. Mike, we appreciate you coming on. Thank you, sir. Hope you can still hear me.
Yeah, I kind of lost you.
Yeah, that's all right. Don't worry about it, Mike.
You.
Good to see you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and go USA.
Go USA. I love it. All right, Jon Root is an Outkick sports commentator, and he's on here with us now. And, John, good to see you. After all the 51st state talk, they wanted to win this game. They wanted to win this game so bad, and they came up short. You can feel the fury in how they're handling with the media.
Well, first off, it's tough to follow Mike Eruzione. It's an honor to be on here talking about this. But, Canada is falling apart. Football to us is like hockey to Canada. People are just losing their minds. They're making excuses about Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, like you mentioned. The coach is talking about 3-on-3 overtime. Like, sure, we can have a proper discussion about maybe it should still be 5-on-5, but you don't make comments like that right after the game, right after losing. You're being a sore loser, and I love beating Canada. I've been around hockey for so long. It feels so good, and we got 4 years that we can hold over this over their head. It's great.
To the point I was making in the monologue, which is about patriotism and how this is what Americans want. They want to have a team that loves their country because they're from this country, and we want to have pride. And it's something that the left has attempted to decimate so many times. Let's show you the Huffington Post, which is a rag. Look at this headline here. If waving the American flag or chanting USA turns you off right now, you're not alone. Article discusses Americans that hate the Trump administration but still want to watch sports and what they're supposed to do, because apparently that's a big problem. This is never a problem when we have a Democrat president that we think is awful.
Yeah, it never happens. It's just the double standard. If the left didn't have a double standard, they wouldn't have a standard at all. And that's what you're seeing constantly over and over. Mike Tirico, I'm sure Mike Tirico is more of a leftist. He's the broadcaster for NBC. His closing statements, people go and watch that. Sports are supposed to bring us together. It's supposed to be an outlet away from politics, an outlet away from the craziness of life. I don't care how Jack Hughes votes or what he thinks about pride issues within the NHL. That guy was dripping red, white, and blue. He chipped his teeth, he bled, he sweat for America, and he brought us together. That's what we love about the Olympics. That's what we love about this team. And that's why people have rallied around the Team USA men's hockey team so much.
Yeah, it's something else. Jon Root, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Robert.
All right. Secret Service agents shot and killed an armed intruder at Trump's winter home, Mar-a-Lago, over the weekend. Not sure if you saw this story. A 21-year-old killed just after midnight on a typically busy February Saturday night at the beach club. A lot of people there having dinner, having drinks. The club also contains Trump's primary residence, as you know. Austin Tucker Martin carrying a shotgun and a gas can, ordered to drop everything he was carrying by a Secret Service agent. He raised his gun instead and got shot and killed right there on the spot. Martin snuck through the main north gate just as a guest was leaving the property. You got a car going out. He sneaks through the gate on foot. Security, of course, was dramatically lower at Mar-a-Lago this past weekend because Trump stayed in Washington. Reports indicate Martin from North Carolina was obsessed with the Epstein files. Okay. All right, amid media criticism of Trump's soft spot for white South Africans, a 60 Minutes investigation reveals just how justified it is.
Are white farmers being killed for their land?
Yes, I believe so.
So, here is a before of my stomach before Sono Bello, and this is after.
This year, don't just lose weight, lose stubborn fat and sagging extra skin permanently at Sono Bello.
I had some loose, wiggly skin, and it is no longer there thanks to Sono Bello.
Our expert surgeons use micro laser technology to safely target and remove your diet-resistant fat and tighten loose skin permanently.
I wanted the results of the tummy tuck, but not the downtime. I had a 10 out of 10 experience.
We've helped over 300,000 people transform, and we're proud to be America's #1 cosmetic surgery specialist.
In just one visit, Sono Bello got rid of my love handles and my belly fat.
Do you want that flat stomach? You go get that flat stomach.
Call Sono Bello. Get in there for your free consultation. Do this for you.
Schedule your free, no-obligation consultation. Our flexible payment options make it easy to get started today.
You deserve high quality. You really do. At Balance of Nature, we don't cut corners. We could cut corners or extract individual vitamins and minerals rather than source whole foods. But that's not who we are. We don't isolate one specific part and sell it alone. Why? Because phytonutrients are woven into the whole plant. We are real ingredients only, always. Go to balanceofnature.com and subscribe and save today.
Ready for relief? I just want relief.
I needed relief. You just want relief. Like you just want it to go away.
You need the Signal Relief Patch.
We all hurt, whether it's our neck, back, knees, or shoulders. Pain keeps you from doing the things that matter most. In a recent study, 85% of people felt relief.
As a surgeon, I put it on, and I can't explain why it works. I can just tell you, it does work.
Some people think this is just in my head, but I know that it works. It's working.
The Signal Relief Patch for me offered up independence.
The Signal Relief Patch for me actually means pain relief.
With a Signal Patch, I've been able to sleep, walk, and work.
Relief. That's what the Signal Patch gave me.
It was phenomenal. Why aren't more people trying this?
Join the thousands who have experienced relief, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. Get your patch today.
Welcome back. After an explosion of criticism over Trump's empathy for white farmer genocide in South Africa, 60 Minutes went to investigate. For years, we've seen black South Africans attacking white-owned farms, in many cases killing the farmers, stealing the land or stealing what's on the land, an attempt to do that. We've also seen land being given back to black South Africans, taken from white South Africans and given to black South Africans. A lot of this has been ginned up by anti-white rhetoric that comes from radical politicians in the country. Post-apartheid South Africa has become a very dangerous place for a white farmer. Thousands have been killed. White crosses line a highway in South Africa representing the lives of those farmers that have been lost. 60 Minutes went to the site where those crosses were, expecting to disprove a narrative, speaking to a farmer who knows the horrors all too well.
Your father was attacked. You've had friends murdered. Do you live in fear?
I certainly live carefully. We're aware of what's happening around us. We don't take silly chances. It is purely an avenue of crosses that we planted there in honor of commercial farmers in South Africa that had lost their lives.
Are white farmers being killed for their land?
Yes, I believe so. People are being murdered. We are seeing a call for genocide.
So last year, the Trump administration began welcoming Afrikaners, it's white South Africans, as refugees into our country. Back in May, a group of 59 South African white farmers and their families made their way to the United States, saying they needed safety, which enraged the left, of course, calling Trump a racist for only allowing white refugees into the country.
This South African farmer, which is the most blatantly obvious racist ever.
These are the descendants of the people who created the most diabolical system of white supremacy in human history.
Why'd they leave their farms to come move to America? Doesn't that mean their farms are now available to be redistributed to black people?
It's a little montage of the worst people in our country. Jaco Kleynhans is from the Solidarity Foundation. He fights for the rights of the white minority in South Africa. Jaco, it's good to see you again. 60 Minutes tried to spin these crimes as simply opportunistic, as thieves that are just looking for money that happen to kill white farmers. But when you listen to the rhetoric that comes out of your country from a lot of somewhat mainstream politicians, that's not the case.
Not at all, Rob. No, they've tried everything. 60 Minutes sent a whole team here for weeks to try and discredit what President Donald Trump said last year, you know, that white farmers are getting killed, that 3,000 white farmers were killed over the last 2 decades in South Africa. And they've tried everything. They've spoken to left-wing commentators, to left-wing politicians, you know. They've tried to show that, no, this farm murders are just part of a bigger crime problem. But every time, you know, they found people who were very, very much influenced by this issue of farm murders, white people, black people, and at the end they had to present that to the American public. And that's the reality, Rob. Yeah. Yes, there's a bigger crime problem in South Africa, but the fact is there's 30,000 farmers left in South Africa. 3,000 farmers were killed the last 30 years, and that's a serious problem.
I just imagine living in a country where there's just the feeling oozing from, I think, even the majority that's in power of hatred towards your race, and you even have smaller political parties that call for the killing of a certain color of people. And then when they want to come to the United States as refugees, I mean, that's the most viable refugee I can even imagine. There is fury from our American left that these people that have to listen to people say, kill the white man, that they're not a refugee. I can't imagine that level of idiocy on this issue, to not understand that is as much a refugee as you'll ever find.
Absolutely. So, if you look at some of these refugees, people who applied to become refugees in America, these are people who were tortured in their homes. Over the last weekend, 2 or 3 days ago, an old man of 76 in the north of South Africa were tortured for hours. I can tell you, Rob, of these instances, it happens every second or every third day in South Africa. Someone tortured on his farm, his family being held up in their house. If those people apply for a refugee status, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Do you believe, I know this is a tricky question, but you guys ended apartheid 30 some odd years ago. Do you believe that the country handled the post-apartheid process wrong? And what do you think they can do to correct it? Because I've visited your country a couple times. I think it is one of the most spectacular places in the world. And it's so sad to sit here and watch it, falling apart. What do you think was done wrong after apartheid was ended?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Rob. And I think we all agree that apartheid had to come to an end, and we as Afrikaners ended apartheid ourselves, We've said that this
just switched sides, yeah.
Exactly, and it need to change, But what I've also said is that I do love my country. I've said that I visited the White House, and our message is very clear. We love South Africa. You've seen the country. It's a country of great potential, but the system is not working. The African National Congress, who took over South Africa, made a complete mess of it. Ronald Reagan warned against that in the 1980s. Margaret Thatcher warned against that in the 1980s. What they said will happen to South Africa is exactly what happened over the last 30 years. It's just a new form of racism, new discrimination against whites. That's what we see today in South Africa.
Yeah, if it wasn't hard to predict if you just simply looked at the rest of the continent. And that's the sad reality. Jaco Kleynhans, we appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Big talk from a lady that concealed the Epstein files for 4 years.
They're redacting names that people should have access to, including people who may be predators.
It's our America. We built it. Courage, freedom. Millions go to Newsmax when they need to know. Start today on the free Newsmax app. Newsmax is real news for real people.
This little light of mine has been dark for quite some time. Then I let in the light to help see more of the light inside of me.
I needed more from my antidepressant, so my doctor added Caplyta, proven to provide greater relief from depression symptoms than an antidepressant alone, building on my progress without starting over. Weight gain and reported sexual side effects were not common.
Elderly dementia patients have increased risk of death or stroke. Caplyta is not approved for dementia-related psychosis. Call your doctor about new or sudden mood changes, behaviors, or suicidal thoughts right away. Antidepressants may increase these risks. Report fever, confusion, stiff muscles, which may be life-threatening, or uncontrolled muscle movements, which may be permanent. High cholesterol and weight gain may occur, as can high blood sugar, which may be fatal. Common side effects are sleepiness, dizziness, nausea, dry mouth, feeling tired, and diarrhea. These aren't all the side effects.
Ask your doctor about Caplyta.
Help see more of the light inside of me.
Why are so many dogs dying before their time? In my experience, great health starts with great food. That's why I created Badlands Ranch Superfood Complete. It contains powerful canine superfoods that directly support your dog's digestion, skin and coat, mobility, and so much more. And it's air dried. That means cooked low and slow, no high heat. We have thousands of 5-star reviews. And for a limited time, get up to 50% off with our special TV offer. Go to badlandsranch.com/TV. That's badlandsranch.com/TV.
My heart has experienced life-changing wins, losses, and countless miles. To keep living at my speed, I trust Cunol CoQ10. CoQ10 is the #1 cardiologist-recommended supplement for heart health. Cunol, the brand I trust.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work.
Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Order online and save $45. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS. That's urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS.
Your Florida life is calling, and we have the answer. Valencia in Florida by GL Homes. Premium 55-plus living in 5 prime Florida locations. Gorgeous new homes from the mid-300s to $2.5 million. World-class resort-style living 24/7. Huge clubhouses, on-site dining, pickleball, and more. Effortless, low-maintenance living. Valencia, your Florida life is calling. Experience more at valenciaflorida.com.
Epstein files update tonight. Former UK ambassador to the U.S., Peter Mandelson, removed from his position over his ties to Epstein a little more than a year ago. Arrested on suspicion now of misconduct in public office. The former ambassador was let out of his home by police in recent days, accused of leaking sensitive British government intelligence to Jeffrey Epstein back when he was alive. A photo released from the files showed Mandelson in his underwear in a T-shirt with a redacted woman. Similar to the Prince Andrew case, accused of sending sensitive information to Epstein while working as a trade envoy. And despite all that we have learned, and to be fair, we have been critical about how the Epstein files have been released and the transparency of it all, but we have learned a tremendous amount more than we did in the last administration. And the people that concealed all of that in the last administration sure do have a lot to say about how this is being done, which is really irksome. Take a listen to Jen Psaki.
None of this is good for this administration. It looks fucking terrible. If you've got redacted people's names and these people aren't victims, you're not protecting the victims. So what are you doing?
Right.
And how come all this shit is not released?
Preach, Joe Rogan. I mean, like, they're redacting names that people should have access to, including people who may be predators, or at least people who should be investigated. And they are not redacting, by the way, people who are survivors and victims, which has been a big part of the controversy here.
Oh, really, Peppermint Patty? Now you're really particular about how this goes? Sitting there on your little podcast? How many years did you sit in the Biden administration when they ignored everything? They ignored all of this. They had the victims screaming for the files, and she said, yeah, get away from me. Shut up. Go away. Psaki had to block people from commenting on this post, which is a common tactic that we're seeing from the horrible people that make claims like this. Mehdi Hasan does this all the time on Twitter. Joe Scarborough does this all the time on Twitter. They say a bunch of nonsense and then they don't let anybody respond to it. Imagine if they had control of this country, how quickly they'd silence any averse media to them. Michael Tracey is an independent journalist and he joins us now. Michael, good to see you. I want to talk about your take on these files, that they're all a distraction. That's a very common, I think, thought process from a lot of people that are very attached to the president, that want to protect conservative politics. Why do you say that's the case?
Well, I don't know that I've ever said they're a distraction, per se. There's actually quite a bit of interesting material in the files. It just takes a little bit of discernment to figure out what is legitimately interesting because of some connection to legitimate evidence, and what's just being wildly construed as evidence of some kind of global pedophile ring that none of the available evidence suggests ever existed in any meaningful way. And I also think that there's some interest to be taken in the way that the redaction process has been handled. You showed in your intro an image of Peter Mandelson with a woman whose face has been redacted. But I think whenever one of these images of any of these Epstein associates, so to say, are shown, it should be clarified that Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, as well as his colleague, Jaco Kleynhans, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, have agreed at the demand of so-called victims and their attorneys to presumptively redact the facial images of any woman, with the exception of Ghislaine Maxwell,
Yeah.
whether or not there's ever been any claim of victimization. So when the average person sees that image and they see Peter Mandelson with some woman and the woman's face is redacted, what do they immediately assume? That he was doing something predatory. First
With
of
a
all,
kid.
Peter Mandelson happens to be gay, which makes the whole thing even more absurd. And second of all, the implication that's given there is purely the product of the excessive and arbitrary redaction criteria that the profit-seeking victims' attorneys have demanded for their own self-interest, and that unfortunately the Trump DOJ has acceded to, which engenders all this totally unnecessary skepticism about what's actually being redacted.
I mean, you know, because you are truly an independent journalist. I don't place you with either political party in what you say, which is why your opinion here is interesting to me. But do you think that, do you think there's anything else that we're not seeing? I mean, that's what everybody wants to know, right? Is there something being held back from me? You know, we wanted Trump to come in because we wanted to know what's really inside this government that's been hiding secrets from us for a long, long time, for decades now. Do you think there's anything else there, or have we gotten the bulk of it at this point?
Sure, there's plenty more to see. Just today I was reading through this charging document, or this memo that the Southern District of New York drafted to contemplate whether to charge a potential co-conspirator of Epstein's, who was just one of his lower-level female employees, not a high-profile person at all. And if you read through, like, half the thing is redacted because this potential co-conspirator, or at least who was considered as such a few years ago, is now considered by the government to be a victim. And so there's this vast swath of material that's redacted on her behalf. And so there would be interesting information to glean about what the government was thinking in terms of how it was contemplating bringing this so-called conspiracy charge against Epstein and his potential confederates. But that's all been shielded from public view because there's this cabal of lawyers who have made hundreds of millions of dollars on this story, who don't want any information to come out that could disrupt this sanitized, so-quote, survivor narrative, and therefore hinder their ability to pursue additional class action lawsuits against giant multinational financial institutions. And they're now suing Bank of America for exactly that. So there's a lot of fraud that's been rampant on this story in terms of the gross inflation of the number of supposed victims, the enormous payouts that have been dished out without really any vetting of any claims. So there is a scandal or something fraudulent potentially to be uncovered here. It's just not from the angle that people want to believe if they're wedded to this idea of some kind of global pedophile ring, which is maybe like a nice fantasy to talk about online, but really is not based in reality.
That is such an interesting take. Michael, thanks for coming on and sharing that with us. It's good to see you. Coming up here, chaos and violence rips through Mexico after a notorious cartel boss is killed. This is a wild story up next.
A new president is sworn in. America's greatness is restored. Millions of Americans are tuning in to Newsmax. Even President Trump says Newsmax is terrific. Watch Newsmax or download our free app on your TV or phone today.
Since the founding of America 250 years ago, many things have changed. The homes in which we live, the clothes we wear, the jobs we hold, the conveniences we enjoy. But some things never change. The commitment of husband and wife, the importance of passing along our values to our children, the rewards of service to community and country, the faithfulness of God. Some wonder how America has thrived for so long and how we can ensure she continues to. As long as we keep first things first, we've only just begun. America, the beautiful.
A heart attack? Do they have life insurance?
No.
But we have life insurance. John.
I'm trying to find something we can afford.
Fortunately, in only a few minutes, SelectQuote found John a $500,000 policy for only $29 a month. And his wife Anne a $500,000 policy for only $21 a month. Go to SelectQuote.com now and get the insurance your family needs.
At a price you can afford. SelectQuote. We shop, you save.
This is keratin debris,
where nail fungus grows. Nonix Nail Gel cleans out fungus by removing keratin debris. Using Nonix, 90% of nails improve. Get clinically proven results. So effective, it's money-back guaranteed.
I'm Yalmer Heinrich. I'm in the nutritional business, primarily selling plant-derived minerals. Now, after being in this business for 43 years, owning a cancer hospital in Mexico, and associating with some of the most knowledgeable nutritional people in the world, I came to this conclusion. The world is sick due to a lack of minerals in our food, which is caused by a lack of minerals in topsoil. There is an incredible and proven nutritional product on the market that can overcome this problem. It's Immuno 150. This unusual food supplement contains 70 plant-derived minerals and 80 additional nutrients. There's nothing like it. Now watch the 3 videos on our website and place your order for what may be the best food supplement in the world. Now Immuno 150 is different, it's real, it's powerful, it's helped thousands, and we believe it enjoys the highest reorder rate in the industry. Thank you and God bless.
He's breathing. Okay. Go again.
Nearly 5,000 people die from choking each year. That's frightening. I'm Dr. Ben Carson.
And I'm Arthur Lee. Well, there are ways to help prevent choking. Accidents do happen. That's why I invented the Life Pack.
Anyone can use this device, and it can save a life in seconds.
Just place, push, and pull. It's that simple. Please order one for your home, office, car, anywhere you eat.
Go to lifepack.net or call 877-543-3822.
There is absolute madness happening in western Mexico tonight. The most wanted drug cartel leader in the entire country. They called him El Mencho, was killed by Mexican forces. The founder of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, known as the country's most powerful cartel, the leader is dead. In response, that cartel has taken over the resort city of Puerto Vallarta. In February, you might know some people that are there because this is high season. Airports, gas stations, cars set on fire, blown up. They even attacked a Costco. Other stores ransacked as well. The Mexican government announcing the raid left 27 of their security personnel and 30 drug cartel members dead. It was quite a little battle. The Mexican unit that killed the infamous drug lord was trained by our Navy SEALs. U.S. intelligence reportedly helped them locate El Mencho and his compound. The killing is a huge victory in the fight against cartels, tied, of course, to our president's initiative to pressure the Mexican government into putting a halt to both all the drugs and human trafficking that comes from our neighbors to the south. We want to bring in the former head of DHS under President Trump, Chad Wolf, also Exporter Patrol Union boss Art Del Cueto. Good to have you both here. Chad, I always kind of assumed that the Mexican government was somewhat controlled by the cartels, or at least had their blessing, the way that the cartels just kill every politician they don't like. How do you think this happened? And was I wrong in that assumption? And how do you think that this big moment has come to us?
No, I don't think that you're wrong. Look, over the past several years and decades, really, we've seen sort of a symbiotic relationship between the cartels and portions of the Mexican government, those that are in power that protect the cartels and the like. I think with, President Sheinbaum, there seems to be a small shift. I wouldn't say it's a titanic shift in strategy, but perhaps a small shift. You have Secretary of Security there in Mexico, a gentleman by the name of Omar Harfuch, who is very good at his job, was the Mexico City Chief of Police, and did a great job there as well. So personalities do matter. The people in power do matter. Yeah. But this is only really the beginning. This is the start of a concerted campaign that we need the Mexican government to take against the cartels. I think the pressure by the Trump administration is a significant factor in a lot of the progress that we've seen. Not only this capture and kill, but there's been over 90 cartel members that have been extradited back to the U.S. for prosecution, and the list goes on. And I think that's a direct result of President Trump.
Well, yeah, I mean, Art Sheinbaum's got a tough position, right? Because as he just said, you've got pressure from the cartels, and obviously there is probably somewhat of a symbiotic relationship, as Chad just said. But at the same time, you've got Trump breathing down your neck. My question to you is, do you think the retaliation from the cartel only goes this far? Or are they going to try and make a really big move against the Mexican leadership?
Look, they're going to continue. These individuals, they have a certain way that they operate. The minute that the Mencho was killed, somebody else took his place. There's a name already coming up. Abraham Cano is what they're saying. Yeah. He goes by the name El Yogurt. which translates to the yogurt of all names. I don't know, if that strikes a lot of fear, but obviously these individuals are ruthless regardless of what nickname they have. And when one goes down, the other one's ready to take his place. He sent out a video throughout the communities in Mexico. This is something that people need to understand. These cartels have amassed billions of dollars. This is what they've been doing for generations after generations. It's not, they don't retire and then have somebody else take their place. These individuals it's a long line within the family. They've been doing this for a long time. My big concern is, and I've been in contact with some U.S. citizens that are in Mexico right now, they haven't been able to leave Guadalajara. Right. The flights have been grounded. What I'm hearing is they will be grounded for the next 3 days. So, that's an eye-opener right now on how long these individuals are going to have to stay there. But we need to understand, they run the cartel like a Fortune 500 company. It's not just a bunch of hillbillies out there, doing whatever they want. And a lot of them are former military that have been properly trained as well.
Chad, if this turns into a fight between Mexican forces and the cartels, if it goes into a full-blown war, how does that go?
Well, frankly, I think it's a close call. I think these cartels, both the Jalisco New Generation as well as the Sinaloa, which is the other major cartel there in Mexico, they are both heavily armed. They are harmed in a sense just as well as the military there in Mexico. But I think what President Sheinbaum and others have been okay to do thus far is to accept some limited U.S. assistance, mainly as far as intelligence and capabilities. But if it does come to a battle between Mexican officials and the cartels, I think all they really have to do is ask the U.S. for some help. And President Trump has made it abundantly clear he's ready to help.
God, can you imagine if it got to that point, it'd be like the craziest movie, the craziest drug movie you ever saw.
Rob,
I can't even fathom.
Let me just add, people need to understand, if it gets to that level, it's going to be ugly. It's not just going in there and running rough. It's going to get ugly. It's not like people think. There will be casualties on both sides.
Yeah, this was a big move by the Mexican government. I think we're seeing that, and it's just maybe the beginning of where this could go. I got to leave it there, guys, but thanks so much. Chad Wolf, Arto Cueto. Good to see you both.
Great seeing you, Chad.
All right.
Thanks.
Gavin getting hammered for what some are calling a racial flub. In a bizarre way, I'll actually defend him coming up next.
I'm a 960 SAT guy because I cannot read a speech.
Are you still cleaning your floors with a broom and dustpan?
Or down on your hands and knees with paper towels?
Or dragging out your big heavy vacuum?
Hello everyone, I'm April Lufrio with another deal from Incredible Inventions called the Zippy Sweeper. Is it a broom? Is it a vacuum? It's none of the above. It's an electric broom that sweeps up messes and spills quickly and easily. Whether you're cleaning up accidental spills in the kitchen, pet hair, dust, or crumbs from hard-to-reach places, Zippy has you covered. With its 360-degree swivel head and ultra-lightweight design, you'll get your cleaning done in half the time with zero hassle. It seamlessly transitions from hard surfaces like tile, vinyl, and hardwood to low-pile carpets. Say goodbye to tangled cords. The Zippy Sweeper is powered by a long-lasting rechargeable battery, giving you up to 60 minutes of uninterrupted cleaning power. This sweeper is equipped with a self-emptying dustbin, so you can dump the dirt with just one click, no messy bags, and no fuss. Perfect for homes with kids or pets, the Zippy Sweeper is as quiet as a whisper, so you can clean anytime without disturbing the peace. The Zippy Sweeper is available on Amazon for $109, but if you scan this QR code now, you can get it for the special on-sale price of just $59. That's $50 off instantly. Zippy would normally sell to major retailers like Walmart, Home Depot, and others, but today we're cutting out the major retailers so you can enjoy these huge savings at home. Go online or scan and save big with this QR code. And oh, Zippy is also offering a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you don't like it, send it back, and we'll even cover the cost of return shipping. Nobody else offers this kind of guarantee, so get your Zippy Sweeper today.
The crisis inside Ukraine has reached a catastrophic level, with the elderly Jews pushed to the very limit.
Go inside.
She's freezing cold. There's no electricity, no heat, no water. Winter is now a weapon of war used against the elderly, the mothers, and the young children.
They've been lined up here for hours. These are precious people who are hungry, and they have nothing. If someone doesn't do something soon, a humanitarian disaster is coming. So many Jewish people who are just waiting for someone to care enough to pick up the phone.
Fears are growing that without an emergency, full-scale response, thousands will die this winter.
The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews needs your $25 gift now to help rush a winter survival food box of emergency food for elderly Jews and families in Ukraine. Time is critical. Please give now.
They felt the shaking of missiles. These are people who have already endured so much suffering and disaster.
The fellowship has been here and across the former Soviet Union for decades, but the need has never been more urgent.
Taking out power, taking out water, simple water to drink. We're talking about the difference between life or death. Christian, Jew, standing shoulder to shoulder, saying, we're here to heal, we're here to help.
Your gift of only $25 helps rush a winter survival food box filled with life-saving emergency food for elderly Jews and families in Ukraine who are struggling daily to stay warm and fed. Please call or go online while there is still time.
Welcome back. Time now for news from the left. Gavin Newsom in Atlanta pushing his new book and also campaigning for 2028. Speaking with the city's black mayor, getting a lot of criticism for this comment.
I'm like you. I'm no better than you. You know, I'm a 960 SAT guy, literally a 960 SAT guy. I cannot, you've never seen me read a speech because I cannot read a speech.
Now, bear with me here for a second, because there's tons of commentary and a lot of predictable outrage to what he just said there. Obviously, you see the optics of him sitting next to a black guy. You know where the mind goes with that. Over at Fox, Hannity tweeted out, Gavin Newsom thinks a 960 SAT makes him like black Americans. Let that sink in. Newsom fired back to that, calling it fake outrage, slamming Hannity. And this is the predictable thing that we get into. Megyn Kelly chimed in on the comments from both, saying he's scared. He knows it's bad, talking about Gavin Newsom. In truth, this is a bit of fake outrage because Gavin's real flaw here isn't racial. He was talking to a mixed race crowd of people. What he really did was grovel. The pathetic groveling continued here. He wasn't being racist. What he was trying to do was attempt to shed his skin so desperately about who he actually is. And what he's doing is a lot more obnoxious than being just simply racially insensitive. He's pandering to a Democrat base that hates affluence and hates white people. And he is both of those. And so now he's pretending that he grew up poor and that he can't read, and he's struggled in all of these various different ways, which is about as pitiful as it gets. Here's more of what he's trying to do.
Got home early. My mom was always working, so, you know, I'm cooking, literally lived on Stouffer's lasagna, macaroni and cheese. I got finished, 2 pots of macaroni and cheese and got bored.
This is like, if there is such a thing as privilege, this is the picture of it. There's no way you can run from this, Gavin. He's had every advantage a person can possibly have, making him everything a modern Democrat actually hates. The key to stopping Gavin Newsom isn't cheap shots about race. It's going to be exposing just how phony he is. Look at the picture of him in high school. Does that look like a poor kid that can't read? Or a kid in a frickin', who makes that sweater? What is that? That's that, it's that rich brand coming. Yeah, Burberry. He's got the Burberry scarf on, and he's reading the newspaper, and he's telling us that he's poor and he can't read. It doesn't track, because he's trying to become viable enough to win the 2028 Democrat primary, and he's very, very terrified that people are going to realize exactly who he is. Next up, AOC responding to critics after her appearance at the Munich Security Conference and that horrible answer on the U.S. response to China if they invade Taiwan. Take a listen.
If you think that I don't understand foreign policy because out of hours of discourse about international affairs, I pause to think about one of the most sensitive geopolitical issues that currently exist on Earth, I'm afraid the issue's not my understanding, but rather the problem is perhaps you've gotten adjusted to a president that never thinks before he speaks.
She's claiming that she needed to think more about this response as if it was super complicated. She wasn't asked about some conflict in Azerbaijan. This is China and Taiwan. This is a communist superpower that's been talking about and wanting to invade and take over a democratically run island off of its coast for a very, very, very long time. There's nothing else you need to think about. You just don't have an answer. That's the truth, AOC. And finally, a monster blizzard hammering the Northeast. Wanted to share the valiant crusade that I had to make to bring you this show tonight. I'm joking. 20 inches of snow, though, here in New York. A little bit of the drive, if you were wondering how bad it is in New York, that's the Brooklyn Bridge just ahead. Got a picture of a cemetery in Lower Manhattan. The snow falling on it, very beautiful. Actually, the place that they hold Alexander Hamilton's body and tomb inside that cemetery. Other pictures as well. We can't get rid of the snow. We can't get rid of it. All right, coming up here after the break, we'll talk Definity, and we'll talk about a CNN host that shocked his liberal audience up next.
You know Rob Finnerty. He's smart, bold, and stands strong for your values. Rob is fighting for you. Watch Finnerty weeknights only on Newsmax.
Ready for relief? I just want relief.
I needed relief.
You just want relief. Like you just want it to go away.
You need the Signal Relief Patch.
We all hurt, whether it's our neck, back, knees, or shoulders. Pain keeps you from doing the things that matter most. In a recent study, 85% of people felt relief.
As a surgeon, I put it on, and I can't explain why it works. I can just tell you, it does work.
Some people think this is just in my head, but I know that it works. It's working.
The Signal Relief Patch for me offered up independence.
The Signal Relief Patch for me actually means pain relief.
With a Signal Patch, I've been able to sleep, walk, and work.
Relief. That's what the Signal Patch gave me.
It was phenomenal. Why aren't more people trying this?
Join the thousands who have experienced relief, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. Get your patch today.
Don't kibble your dog.
Oh, hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, Matt.
But what's wrong with this? It's premium stuff.
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means it's ultra-processed at extremely high temperatures that destroy the nutrients in the food. But at Dr. Marty, we gently freeze-dried premium meats, fruit, and vegetables, locking in their nutrients.
Never kibbled.
You got it, kid, and they're gonna love it.
Look, if you're an executive, this shirt is a must-have in your closet. I was tired of floppy collars and shirts with sweat stains, so I got this shirt I saw on TV, and now I don't have to worry. I got it shipped in no time, and I switched from regular polos to this immediately. The brand is called Collars & Co. They make a regular stretchy golf shirt, but the top has a firm collar on it. I got rid of so many problems by upgrading to this. No dry cleaning needed anymore. I'm free from uncomfortable long sleeves, and the collars stay stiff all day. Get 20% off today using code TV at collarsandco.com.
With riots and violent looting going on all over the country, I don't feel safe leaving the house without this banana. Normally, I would be worried about this creepy guy, but I've got my banana with me. That same car has been sitting outside my house for a while now. Better keep this banana by the door.
Sounds ridiculous, right? Now imagine this banana was capable of incapacitating an attacker from over 60 feet.
At Byrna, we don't sell bananas. Go to Byrna.com to learn more.
And finally tonight, credit where it is due. CNN's Fareed Zakaria, as I read off of the computer here, shocking his audience, hammering blue cities for their out-of-control spending, pointing out the billions that LA spends on homelessness, and the problem of homelessness just gets worse. Also calling out Mamdani here in New York for pushing more rent subsidies, which just shoots up rental prices. New York's rental assistance spending has jumped by 5 times over the last 5 years, and our rent has just skyrocketed along with it. Take a listen to this. Credit where it's due from CNN.
Blue cities are out of control, promising more, spending more, delivering less, and pushing off the fiscal problems to some future day. What is the theory of good government here? If the answer is keep adding programs, the city will keep producing unaffordability, because unaffordability is what happens when government becomes a machine that grows faster than the society it governs.
All right, Rob Finnerty joining us now from Washington tonight. He's got an interesting day tomorrow. You know, Rob, I like to give the credit where it's due. When someone on CNN says something that makes a lot of sense, you got to let them know.
It doesn't happen very often, Rob, but when it does happen, you've got to call it out. I'm going to be interested to see if they do it tomorrow night after the president's speech, because if he says something and it happens to be true, which it usually is when it comes to something like the economy, we'll see if they actually agree.
Good point. Good point. We'll see you soon. Have
All right,
fun
Rob,
in D.C.
Thanks. Finnerty starts right now. Appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow.